I'm not going to make any more videos that are disparaging the inequities of human beings or their shortcomings or what's wrong with society and people this and they're doing all this bad stuff. I just want to focus on the word propaganda and how a corporate interested propaganda is kind of like a beginning of emotional attachment to a summary of something that where I don't really have a lot of attention span to contribute to something, so I don't want to get into all that. I would just rather have it summarized for me really briefly, something that I can accept, and it'll keep me from having to engage because I have my I can disqualify the whole thing, which is like, there's nothing wrong with saying I don't want to engage in any political discourse, right? It's that only a few people, and this is sort of complaining again, like, not that many people who say that I don't want to get into all the politic discussion actually don't inject it at some point. But we're not going to get into that. All I'm going to get into is the definition of propaganda means that it is prepared by a military interested entity or the military itself. And it could be true or it could not be true. There could be good propaganda, there could be bad propaganda. And an example of bad propaganda is when you know you're losing, but you put out stories that are favorable to try to lure and entice more people with austerity measures or austerity, like an austerity movement or like an austere reason to file in behind and support it, even though you're losing. And that's why they like to gatekeep and also try to distance themselves from the military interest that is sponsoring the propaganda, right? Because all you have to really do is be like, oh, this is good or this is bad. And you would make your decision based off of that. But if you have a short attention span and you just like want to be nice and get along and just want to have an exemption, I don't like, I don't, they're going to find out if you really, really don't want to engage in, or if you at some point in time have one. Okay, so they've studied this and they know about the psychology and all that shit, and like they have people like analyze all this shit before they even, and even if they know that some people can see through it, maybe there's a reason that they could still push it anyway, because a lot of people have short attention span and would like to be able to summarize something. So by giving you a summary and laying the blame at the feet of the bad people, I'll settle for that. And it's really simple and I don't have to really, go too deep into anything. But the mainstream legacy press is a corporate conglomeration. So they really don't like to be reminded that they have aligned corporate with military interests to put out their information. So because it's supposed to be accepted as non-biased and all this kind of bullshit, like whatever they come up with, like this is fair and balanced, or this is the most trusted source in news, whatever they fucking say doesn't matter, and they don't like being told that they're propagandistic. Just on behalf see, if you are obviously propagandistic, you could say that this is propaganda, but we're the good propagandists. There's a space for that. Because you could say that this propaganda is not going to contribute to any more people being needlessly wasted toward the end of a conflict, like the last person to die in a futile conflict, or the last person to die in a losing struggle. So they can't give you the basic dictionary definition of propaganda because they don't want you to connect the military interest in the corporate it's a military industrial complex. It's a corporate, like there's all these companies that are just interested in a manageable, containable crisis so they can test things. Who doesn't already know that? But if that's too deep and you don't want to go in that far and you just want to think that there's bad people or something like that, you don't want to know who is perpetuating and destabilizing these countries years in advance of the conflict, or you don't want to know the psychology of the enemy to the extent that you don't even want anyone around you to study the enemy, because you're going to say that, oh, you must be sympathizing. Do you mind? Because I could just say that you are occulting the end game. Like you're trying to conceal what the end game actually is. So you are actually a plant. It goes further than the government's interest in militarization, because there's also spiritual war too. So somebody could be a plant that is not even a corporate interested military back, like a sponsor. They could just be doing something that you really want to distance yourself from, like running plays. And even if you find out that they did run plays at some point, then things happen where you can inherit spirituality. If you didn't cultivate it on your own, you can still inherit spiritual intellect by something, an occurrence. So I can go back to that person and appreciate their input and everything, even though I know that at one point in time they started out running false plays or clout chase or something like that. So having an emotional attachment to the parameters that define whether or not something is propaganda or not, because somebody who just, let's say I want to make a video and put out some information about a conflict, a conflict, and I'm not sponsored or backed by military or anything like that. Like, would you be able to tell the difference between, because you're looking at it from like misinformation, but I'm just looking at the definition in the dictionary. Some propaganda can be true. Some of it can even be good. If it's toward the end that is wrapping up the conflict, where you can say that putting out favorable information isn't going to help your cause anymore, but just get more people ensnared and more life, it's going to hell, then that's bad propaganda. We don't got to argue about that or get off. Because of the word propaganda, you have those people that don't have attention span that want to say that just the connotation propaganda itself, right, is I don't know what, Hitlerian or something. What do they people say these days? That's Hitler. That's some Hitler shit. Well, there's a good reason that these sorcerers want to have you on some mixed up on some simple terms, because they like to conflate things for their own purposes. Like a rebel and a mercenary is the same thing, because we just want to say rebel. We don't want to call them mercenaries. We don't want to have to announce this is propaganda, right? Because we're not military. We have subsidiaries. Those are not the same thing. Yeah, but it can be though, you know. And what about private military industrial complex like Raytheon and uh, you know, Boeing or something like McDonnell Douglas and or you know, like military mercenary outfits or something like that. Like that's not a corporation. So we don't have to mix words because you're emotionally attached to something that's settled by basic dictionary definition. So you're gonna fight everybody for that. You're gonna fight all, even close relatives and people around you, just to be able to say like, yeah, I know this propaganda. Like, did you know like that I've chosen my propaganda that I like based on wrapping up and concluding these conflicts? Then you don't have to wait for a bullshit reason to pull out and fuck everything up like Biden did in Afghanistan just to say I did it. Like fuck, they already, like it was not necessary to have it go down that way. That was so fucking botched. There wasn't nothing peaceful about supplying the Taliban with helicopters and military equipment so that they can go off to basically harass and antagonize the Indians in Pakistan. See, if you have a short attention span, you would just take whatever people say. You just think that Assad gassed his own tribe. You would just think that like a mercenary and a rebel is the same thing, because that's simpler for me. That's like I already feel informed enough that I can just go ahead and wrap up my conclusions. But are you emotionally attached to subverting the dictionary because you want to act like you cared about like the humanity part of it? Like it's like, is there anything nihilistic about that? Because that's going to be it's going to be angled at you. You're nihilistic because you don't care about Ukraine because you don't want to perpetuate their conflict. You're not willing to fight Russia down to the last Ukrainian, so you must not care about Ukraine. You don't want them to receive missile systems that can penetrate deep into Russia. That they don't even listen after we tell them how to use them or not. Like we don't even. You're just on the side of good because Viva Ukraine, and you say the things that come from the propaganda that is, trying to get more focused world community, everybody involved. Do you know what that sounds like? So anyway, I'm just a mean, bad person. Then you don't care. Well, you could say that there's wrong on both sides. You can also say that they both have a psychology, but you don't want to understand their psychology. So that makes you good because you don't want to acknowledge that Putin lives in a bubble. Your information can't reach him, but you'll just say, oh, wait a minute, I like to play with that. A bubble? Who can you say is living in their own bubble? And then you just reverse it and send it, you just recycle and cannibalize the lingo and just reverse it because you don't even have an identity. You don't even like really know anything. You prefer not to be protected from having knowledge that's too much for your own good. Okay. But then you have to stay out of it. So it's not really a problem if they're allowed to show you Africans being tortured in the Congo, but they can't show you a gun on YouTube. But a YouTube video from Al Jazeera can show you Africans being tortured. But you're not allowed to see that's just going to, I don't even want to complain about that, because that's just going to create a scenario for bureaucracy to come in and manage a problem, and then you have to pay taxes for what they did for you. So they don't want you, all they have to do is just not censor. Then I wouldn't be able to talk anything. I wouldn't be able to say anything about them showing you things. But do you want them to actually step in so that they wouldn't be able to show you those things? Because those things are bad. We understand that they're bad, but you want to know what's going on, so they can't show you this now because I complained before I fucked everything up. But to resolve the whole problem means that you wouldn't need them anymore. So of course they're going to be pro censorship. That created the whole problem where you can say that this is imbalanced. But don't solve the problem, because it's a bullshit reason. If they ever get involved, it's just because we delivered you from your crisis, so you can keep us on as arbitrators, and we'll just tax you for that. I mean, there's not saying all taxes are bad. Certain taxes are going to be bullshit. It's the bullshit tax. So I'm being taxed for people who say that they don't want to engage in political discourse because it's ugly and gritty, but they can't help themselves from inserting it at some point in time. Then you end up arguing with them anyway. So you end up arguing with them, and you got to pay taxes for those bad actors that don't want to claim their own propaganda. What's wrong? Claim your propaganda. We're the good propaganda. You know what it is, because look it up in the dictionary. That's what it is. It's not even illegal to do it. It's not even illegal.